Welcome back to Kings of Columbus. Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis recapping the week in Northern college football. But actually, Landis looking ahead because week 4, what is ahead of us, is a dominant week of Northern football for people to talk about, for people to be excited about. It is going to define, I think, the college football season to this point because, like, Texas, Bama's not defining anything because Bama stinks. But we have 5 huge Northern games. So we're going to cut short some of the other stuff we do so we can get to that look ahead because it's so important. Because guess what? Bunch of Kings in the North right now, baby.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I'm sure there have been weeks like this in the past where there's a really good slate of college football games that just happens to be dominated by Northern teams, but I can't really recall one. I always feel like there's SEC or ACC matchup involved in a week like this, and like this week, there's like quite literally not. It's all Northern teams.
There's one, but it has lost some luster. It's the game at the beginning of the year that we thought was like one of the most important games of the season. Clemson, Florida State, right?
Yeah.
Clemson, I don't know, and Florida State almost lost to Boston College, which we're going to talk. Boston College in the ACC in the North. We're going to talk about that, right. And we're going to talk about it right now. At the end, we'll get to the look ahead, the games ahead. We have the Brian Ferentz Survivor Show. We're going to rank the best teams in the North. Instead of ranking the best overall players this week, we're ranking just the best quarterbacks. So I don't know. We'd name it after, I don't know, like Bob Greasy or Marcus Mariota, right? We'd find some Doug Flutie, the Marcus, like the Big Ten does. It's the Marcus Mariota, Doug Flutie, Quarterback of the North Award. We're going to do that this week, Bill.
Yeah, it's the Tate Martell Quarterback of the North Award.
He's just a little tiny bit from the North. He was here for a little tiny, and then he went back to Vegas. All right, Here we go. We start, as always, though, with the Frantic 14, 7 topics in 14 minutes. Starting number 1 with this. The South is in trouble, Landis. And on a Northern show, we're allowed to talk about that. Bama has no quarterback. They've played all 3, and none of them are good. And for a while, you thought they were going to lose to South Florida last week. Tennessee, people were in on Tennessee. I knew they were a fluke. They're going to have a down year before they maybe get it back next year. This is going to be a dip for them, though. Florida State looked like they were going to roll against Boston College. They won by 2. Texas was tied with Wyoming going into the fourth quarter. And I think if we stopped right now, Texas, Florida State, Alabama would be like 3 of the best teams in the North and in the South. And the best team in the South is supposed to be Georgia. They were tied at the half with they were trailing at the half. To South Carolina. Landis, like, it's part of our job here as Kings of the North to point out when the South is playing like a bunch of elves.
Yeah, and when people ignore the fact that the North, very, like, by and large, is not. Even if you think about some of the step backs, quote, the Northern teams took this week, they weren't even really that great. Like, some teams just kind of like messed around a little bit. Certainly not looking as bad as some of these teams in the South are looking, which is the whole point of this show.
I saw a tweet during the week that was like, "Hey, nothing like college football," which I think everybody would agree with. ... especially in the South. And I was like, I can't wait to retweet. I'm going to, and I couldn't figure out the right thing to send back at that other than to say, we're here and we're coming.
Yeah.
Kings of the North is coming for you because Northern football is legit this year and it's better than Southern football. Number 2, backyard brawl, doing it old style, man. West Virginia and Pitt got after it in a way that maybe helped save West Virginia coach Neil Brown's job, man.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll see. I do think in a rivalry like that, that's probably enough. I still don't think West Virginia is very good. I think there was two pretty bad football teams playing. It was not an offensive explosion. It was fun. Like I enjoyed watching it, but it was 17-6, and neither team really did anything of note on offense. I think Pitt's in a pretty bad place coming off a game like that. Phil Dracovic threw 3 interceptions in that game. He had 8 completions and he had 3 interceptions against West Virginia. And I think Pat Narduzzi is doing that team 0 favors with the way that he is choosing to play offense and with the people he is picking to play quarterback for that program, when it should be much better because they play championship level defense and their offense is atrocious.
It's hard. They're only 2 years removed from Kenny Pickett, right?
Yep.
And they've won 20 combined games the last 2 years, which not many teams in the country have done. So we have to remember how good Pitt has been They're a little trapped, right? When the transfer portal works at quarterback, we get all excited about it. They're trapped a little bit here now because they brought in Keaton Slovis, then he left. Now they brought in Phil Dracovic as a sixth-year guy who'd been at 2 other schools. And I think they need to get back to like finding their own quarterback. And West Virginia, by the way, you know what really helped Northern football? If West Virginia was good again, Neil Brown came in 2019. He's gone 5-7, 6-4, 6-7, 5-7, and now West Virginia's 2-1. He has a losing record here in the middle of his 5th year. The previous 17 seasons before Neil Brown got to West Virginia, guess how many of them were winning seasons for West Virginia football?
In the previous 7 seasons?
17. Previous 17. How many were winning?
8.
16.
Whoops.
16. They had one Dana Holgerson dip, and really, Rich Rodriguez came in after Don Nehlen, like the dude at West Virginia. He has a bad year in year 1 and then gets it going. They've had really good football at West Virginia for basically 50 years. They should be good and need to be good. So Neil Brown, after that win, is talking about all the negativity. He's talking about it was an ugly win. We win ugly. It's great for West Virginia to get that win. There's no excuse for West Virginia to not be good at football. So like it's a reminder to people that this is a great football program, and beating Pitt in a game where their quarterback gives it up 3 times maybe isn't going to save your job, because West Virginia should be better than this.
Yeah, West Virginia's quarterback Garrett Green got injured in that game. Nico Marchiol came in and played for him, and that is a person that I think a lot of people in Morgantown were excited about, like see him given the reins, and I think they believe he has a high ceiling that I'm not sure he's shown just yet, but maybe that's something to monitor for them if they have to move forward with Nico at quarterback.
Number 3, we want to shout out our non-Power 5 Northern teams, especially when they beat our Power 5 Northern teams. So a shout out to the Ohio Bobcats for knocking off Iowa State, which you predicted, and for Miami for beating Cincinnati. We made a big deal of Cincinnati Pitt 2 weeks ago. Miami goes in and knocks off Cincinnati there. You're excited about that, and you also think that Matt Campbell at Iowa State, I don't know, so not so good.
Yeah, I'll start with Miami, 31-24 in overtime against Cincinnati. Brent Gabbert had 3 touchdowns in that game, ran for 75 yards. Miami's defense was swarming all over the place. Cincinnati's defensive line was not quite as impressive in this game as it was 2 weeks ago when they beat Pitt. And Cincinnati, I just went through like the drive charts for Cincinnati. Turnover on downs at the 3, kick the field goal at the 10, kick the field goal at the 5, kick the field goal at the 6, threw an interception from the 2 in overtime, and had a game-winning field goal attempt blocked with 17 seconds left. Play for touchdowns. Maybe that doesn't happen. Speaking of which, Ohio, the Bobcats, get Iowa State at home. They win 10-7. Matt Campbell decides to punt on 4th and 4 from the Ohio 42 when the game is tied 0-0. Punt on 4th and 2 from the Ohio 46 when he's down 7-0 in the 3rd quarter. Punt on 4th and 1 from about midfield, the Iowa State 42 in the 3rd quarter when he's down 7-0, and then missed a field goal on 4th and 1 from the Ohio 19-yard line in the 4th quarter when his team was down 10-0. He coaches not to lose, and he's not doing a very good job of it. He's 3-13 in his last 16 one-possession games, and he had a really good start to his tenure at Iowa State, like unprecedented stuff, and got a lot of buzz. Like he's going to be the next Ohio State coach and the next Michigan coach. He's not very good. And I know that like Iowa State is not a place where you expect to win. So maybe he's good enough for Iowa State, but we should stop talking about him like he's the next big thing in coaching, because that ship has sailed.
I'm uncomfortable. Landis was like, hey, yeah, I'm going to talk about how Matt Campbell's not very good. I didn't know you were bringing that many receipts. My goodness.
Yeah.
I hope the AD at Iowa State's not watching this show. I feel like maybe Matt Campbell's been Ferentz. He needs to get out of that state. Maybe it must be just absorb it, right? It's like, try first team to 10. Let's see what happens. Wow. That is not good. Well, congratulations to Ohio and to Miami for getting that done. Number 4, you love Jerry Newton, Illinois defensive tackle. I love Joe Alt, Notre Dame offensive tackle. What did I say?
Jerry.
Oh, sorry.
It's Jerzon Newton. They call him Johnny. I get it. It's all confusing.
But didn't they call him Jerry? It's Jerzon.
You can call him whatever you want.
He's a load. Let's call him that. I feel like, so we're not doing Knights of the North, the overall best player in the North this week, because we're doing quarterbacks. Are we going to be at the end of the year and be in a battle between Newton and Alt? Because I watch Alt. He blocks 2 guys in every running play, and nobody on the pass rush can get past him. He's unbelievable. And Newton, you feel like you felt Newton almost every snap of that Illinois-Penn State game, even though Penn State kind of handled things?
Yeah, because I thought Newton, we had Newton on our preseason list, and like obviously coming into this year, he's one of the best defensive linemen in the country, but I don't know that he played like it the first 2 weeks. He played like it against Penn State. I think that game is more like 45 to whatever it was Illinois had, or maybe even more than that without Jerron Newton in that game. He had 6 tackles, a tackle for loss, 2 pass breakups, a field goal block, 7 pressures, 5 hurries, and he hit Drew Allar twice. They could not block him. And I have questions about Penn State's offensive line that I think we'll talk about later, but I think he's a load for anybody to handle. And it was just a reminder, like, yeah, he didn't start off the best, but he is, I think, without question, the best defensive lineman in the North, and he might be the best defensive tackle in the country.
Could mess stuff up in the West. He could win Illinois a game that shifts the balance of power. I don't know if I want to say balance of power, the balance of mediocrity in the Big Ten West. So keep an eye on that. He's a game changer. Illinois lost a lot in its secondary from last season, but he's still there and he still makes them good. All right, number 5. We have 28 Northern teams that we talk about in the Power 5 on this show. 15 of the 28, 1-5 of the 28 are undefeated. So we want to shout all of them out. 6 in the Big Ten, 6 in the Pac-12. It's based all the Northern teams in the Pac-12 are still undefeated. Notre Dame still undefeated. BYU still undefeated. And I want to shout out Syracuse. Garrett Schrader, their quarterback. Syracuse had 455 total yards against Purdue while beating Purdue. Garrett Schrader had 379 of the 455 passing and running. He ran for 195 yards. It was the 18th best rushing performance in Syracuse history. 16th at 197 yards is Jim Brown. 17th at 196 yards is Floyd Little in 1965, who was a 2-time All-American, was the number 6 pick in the draft, and is in the Pro and College Football Hall of Fame. And then next on that list is the quarterback at Syracuse right now. He is carrying that team, multi-year starter. They had a running back who ran for 70 yards, and they had 3 receivers who caught passes. And everything else was him throwing, him running. So good start. Again, Syracuse had a great start last year and then kind of fell off. 3-0 right now. We want to acknowledge Syracuse. Number 6, you're planting what? You and Tom Allen are planting a flag together?
So I think this will still come off as an insult to Tom Allen, which is, I think, what we're about. Okay. I think Indiana's defense is legit. And how important is that to the greater context of Northern football? I'm not entirely sure. And I'm not saying this to make Ohio State fans specifically feel better about the way Ohio State played in its opener against Indiana. But watching a little bit of the Indiana-Louisville game, especially the second half, they shut Louisville down in that game. They did not in the first half, 302 yards in the first half for Louisville, only 100 in the second half. Louisville was a team that came in averaging over 8 yards per play. They averaged 3 in the second half against Indiana. Indiana got them off the field every time they had the ball, except for the very last drive in the second half. They gave Indiana's offense plenty of opportunity to come back in a game where they lost 21-14 and got stoned on a goal line run late in the game. So their offense is still bad. Walt Bell stinks. And as long as Tom Allen and Walt Bell are willing to play offense that way, I think that lowers Indiana's ceiling. But I think this is a very good defense. So if Indiana ends up being a bad team this year because of their offensive malpractice from the top down from their coordinator, I want people to remember that Indiana's defense, I think, is actually pretty good.
We make fun of the Ferentzes a lot on this show. We have to remember that there are people who aspire to be a Ferentz. So you're describing it's hey, great defense and a non-functional offense. Tom Allen's I wish I had a Brian in my life, right? I mean, he wants to be that. Yeah. So
he can adopt Walt Bell.
Did they beat Louisville? Did they win that game?
No, they lost 21-14. But it does there is hope in the form of Taven Jackson at quarterback. Should Walt Bell ever figure out how to use them right?
They have had over time some guys at skill positions there who can do some stuff. So. Yeah. You should be able to get a couple guys like that. All right, I'm planting my flag, and I'm planting it hard. And this flag is a waving in the breeze, and everybody, come find the flag and gather around it, because my flag plan is that a Northern team is going to win the national title. And that's no small thing, because since Michigan and Nebraska shared it in 1997, the last 25 years, do you know how many Northern national champs there have been, Bill? Last 25 years of major college football?
Two.
Ohio State in 02 and Ohio State in 14. So this is where we are, right? And I'm not just like rooting it into existence because it would help the show. I think it's what we're talking about. You see flaws. I think there are real flaws at a lot of different places at the top teams in the South. I'm not saying the teams in the North are perfect, but I think like right now, the flaws aren't as obvious. And so it's worth reminding people of that. But also, you wind up in a world, right? You talk about all the times that Northern teams, Big Ten teams have blown it, like in the NCAA basketball tournament. Like, you've got to win one. So you have to take advantage of the opportunity. So I'm planting it, but I'm also planting it for the North teams. Like, this is your year. Going into the 12-team playoff, take advantage of this. Maybe get 3 of the 4 spots to Northern teams. So let's see what happens, but have that on your mind because it is certainly not unrealistic. That's our Frantic 14, 7 topics in 14 minutes to give you a little taste of Northern football. When we come back, we're ranking the best teams, and guess what? Change at the top. We'll do that next on Kings of the North. He's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises. We're not. We are not the Kings of the North. We are the hosts of the show, Kings of the North. The Kings are the players and the fans and the coaches and the people who make it happen. We're just observing it, contextualizing it, celebrating it, calling it out, pushing it forward, talking about it in a way that we think matters. And that's why we're ranking the Northern teams, Bill. We rank all the teams that are worth being ranked. We have 28 to rank. This week we ranked 9. Just like last week we ranked 9, but you and I both changed the team at the top. It had been Michigan. It no longer is. It is now Washington, number 1 on our Northern list. Why is that?
Consistency. Like Michigan, we've been getting a lot of questions right about Michigan, and their scores are the same as Ohio State. Why is everyone talking about them differently? It's because of the way the game transpired. Michigan had been dominant in those games. They were less so this week against Bowling Green, and Washington continued to be dominant and did it on the road against a Big Ten team, just absolutely throttled Michigan State. So that was clear to me. I think Washington deserves it right now.
Michael Penix, and we're going to have a quarterback ranking in a bit. Michael Penix, first 3 games, Washington quarterback, 29 of 40, 450, 5 touchdowns, 28 of 38, 409, 3 touchdowns and a pick, 27 of 35, 477, and 4 touchdowns. I wondered that Washington at Michigan State game was only like a 17-point line, but I was a little scared of it because it's like, the Mel Tucker stuff happened. Mm-hmm. Maybe they'll rally. It's like, no. Washington is just much, much better than them. Washington versus Michigan from an offensive standpoint, I just like touchdowns and possessions and touchdowns to punts. When they've played the first team offense, Washington has 17 touchdowns and 29 drives this year. Michigan has 14 touchdowns and 26 drives. So a little better for Washington, but not all that different. I do think Michigan's defense is better than Washington's. Do you agree with that or no?
I do agree with that, yeah.
So then I think the reason we moved Michigan down is because J.J. McCarthy threw 3 picks.
That seems reasonable to me. Does it not seem reasonable to you?
So as the game was happening, it was like, I think you sent a message in our Slack. It's like, bad JJ's back, like at least briefly. So he threw a pick in the end zone. He threw a pick on like a deep ball in the middle of the field, but almost, I don't know if he didn't set his feet or he just couldn't get it there. It floated a little bit on him and the guy might have been open, but then it was picked. He actually came back like the next drive and hit the same play for a touchdown. And then he had a crazy person pick where he was rolling out and then just decided to flip it down the sideline, up for grabs late in the third quarter. So one was like kind of like a DB came off his guy and maybe he didn't expect it, but it's a pick in the end zone early in the game. That's bad. Then another one is like, oh, you've been ripping throws all year. You didn't rip it. It floated on you, pick. And then one was, oh, it's that JJ, which we have not seen this year. So it was kind of the smorgasbord of interceptions, 8 of 13 for 143, 2 touchdowns, 3 picks. Yeah, no, I mean, like I wanted to double check, but I do think it is reasonable if we're talking about the very best teams. I think Michigan is more complete both sides of the ball, but I think Washington's offense is the most dominant unit maybe in the country.
Yep.
And if J.J. McCarthy is going to do that, it just raises questions about Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, it scares me because that, as I said before, I think that's the thing that takes Michigan like to that next step. Like they're plenty good enough now to beat Ohio State and get to the playoff. I think you need elevated quarterback play once you get there to actually win it. And through the first 2 weeks, JJ looked like a player who had made those strides. And to see that version of him was still in there, would scare me a little bit, I think, if I were a Michigan fan. Now, you're playing BG. There's not a lot of juice in that game. You're playing your last game without Jim Harbaugh. Maybe you're just sort of sleepwalking through it, and that's what happened. I'm willing to entertain that. It just made me want to hit the pause button just for a second on JJ has taken these so many steps forward, because that looked like the kid we saw last year.
But still a clear top two. Do we agree with that? Washington and Michigan, and then a line. I think last week when we talked about them, I had Penn State in that top tier. But you have questions now about Penn State's offensive line. We have Penn State third here. How much of a gap in your mind is there between Michigan and Penn State? You actually had Penn State fourth on your list.
Yeah. I mean, not it's not huge, but Penn State, if you actually look into what they're doing, they're winning games comfortably. I don't think they're playing all that well, especially on offense. Drew Allar statistically has not been very impressive. I think he is hamstrung a little bit by just not having explosive receivers. I don't think they're running the ball probably as explosively or as efficiently as they want to be at the moment. And their offensive line, just which I thought was going to be very good this year, and the reason why I thought there was good reason to be optimistic about what Penn State was going to be this year, I just think has been a step short of is good. They're probably average. Even Olufashanu, who I've ranked in our Knights list a few times, we watched him against Illinois. He's getting pushed back a little bit, and he's not getting a push in the run game. And they're not giving up a boatload of sacks and a boatload of TFLs. They don't look dominant up front, and I thought they would. And I thought that their interior of their defensive line, again, I thought they got pushed around a little bit against West Virginia. I thought they got pushed around a little bit against Illinois. So the rest of that defense, I think, is very good. But I think that's enough of a vulnerability when you're playing in the Big Ten and you have to beat Michigan that maybe that's what bites them again. So just questions not maybe rolling the way that we thought they were rolling 2 weeks ago. 4
picks in that win over Illinois, held Illinois to 2.1 yards per carry. And there are multiple moments in the game where, to me, the Penn State defense feels dominant with what their linebackers do, with the way they can cover. Maybe you can hit them up the middle in the run game a little bit if you have the right guys to do it. And certainly Michigan would try to do that. The way Travion Henderson's been playing for Ohio State and Chip Trayanum, maybe they'll try to do that. But that, for the most part, I feel like the defense is what we thought it was, which is excellent. And then again, I think it relieves the pressure. I don't disagree with what you're talking about, but that's their complementary piece. Their defense is their winning piece. And I do feel like their defense has been playing like a winning defense.
Yes, they've done it against West Virginia, Delaware, and now Luke Altmaier. Yeah. So I think that is worth mentioning. They're going to play Cade McNamara in Iowa this week, so I'm sure they'll look very good in that game too. The back seven, I think, is very good. And I think the ends, obviously, are pretty good pass rushers. But I think that's enough of a vulnerability there in the middle to make me a little nervous. And they had 3 touchdowns. The offense had 3 touchdowns on 15 drives. They had 3 drives start at the Illinois 43 or better and got 2 field goals and a touchdown out of it. So there's some stuff they need to work through there with Mike Yursich and the rest of that offense.
All right. And you have come around on Notre Dame. So now you have now come around more on Notre Dame than you've passed me with Notre Dame. You actually had Notre Dame 3rd on your list. I had Notre Dame 5th on my list. They're 4th in our consensus. So our consensus is Washington 1, Michigan 2, Penn State 3, Notre Dame 4, Ohio State 5. I have Ohio State ahead of Notre Dame because I thought if we saw much closer to Ohio State's A game against Western Kentucky. And then I feel like Notre Dame has kind of been sort of doing the same thing, which is an offensive line that's unbelievable. Sam Hartman has all day. And that guy, when he has all day, knows what he wants to do. But again, in watching Notre Dame again this week against Central Michigan, I don't know that there's a lot of specialness to Notre Dame beyond the offensive line and the quarterback. So to me, it was about Notre Dame is going to be that. I don't have really any questions about Sam Hartman on the offensive line. So to me, it's, can Ohio State get past that? And when Kyle McCord's looking pretty good and they're getting the ball to the playmakers and the defense is basically shutting Western Kentucky down, then to me, Ohio State played closer to its A game, and Ohio State's A game is better than Notre Dame's A game. I just hadn't seen. We hadn't seen Ohio State's A game. So that's why I have Ohio State ahead of Notre Dame. But on our list, Notre Dame is ahead. Why do you have Notre Dame ahead of Ohio State right now?
Because I don't intend for these to be predictive, I guess. I don't disagree with you. I think Ohio State's A game is probably better than everyone's A game on this list. But just because they finally hit it, I don't know that means move them up now. And maybe if it were not Western Kentucky and perhaps someone a little bit better on both sides of the ball, I'd think differently. I thought what Ohio State's defense did against Western Kentucky was super impressive and like noteworthy and meaningful. Less so what the offense did against Western Kentucky. So I'm still in a little bit of wait and see mode there. And Notre Dame, for whatever it is, and I think I agree with your assessment, it has been consistently that. So, that you beat Central Michigan by a nice margin. I think it was closer at halftime, but they pulled away in the second half, which is kind of what they've done, Notre Dame, in some of these games. So I agree that I don't find much about Notre Dame particularly special. I think there's a lot of very solid there, and I think there's there's obviously special potential with Ohio State up and down its roster, and the fact that they're playing each other this week, I just figured we'll know soon enough, and
yeah,
I didn't really feel the need to move them up just yet.
Colorado 6, Utah 7, Oregon State 8, Oregon 9. I keep dragging Oregon down. I keep ranking Oregon as the last team on my list, and it drags them down. You always have them a little bit higher. Colorado escapes Colorado State in just an amazing game. I was thinking to myself, watching Colorado in the middle of the night in double overtime, maybe Colorado should have a network unto itself. I was like, did anyone ever try to do that before? Has any one single team ever tried? Like if you called it the Buffalo Network, right? And you just had them on that whole thing. And then I was like, oh yeah, Texas did that and it tore college football apart. But we are officially at that point. And I've said it a million times, I think there is substance behind Colorado, but it is amazing the way Colorado has captured the imagination of casual college football fans. And to have a little blow up with Jay Norvell, the Colorado State week and coach, and Deion Sanders before the game. And then Colorado State, it feels like, they're going to end this. It's like, no, Shadur Sanders leads the comeback. They win in double overtime. People are glued to their TV to see what the handshake is going to be like. And that's what Colorado has done. It's interesting here. I think we are respecting them here. We have them 3 spots higher on our list. They're playing Oregon this week. Oregon at Oregon is favored by 20.5. And we think Colorado deserves to be ranked higher on our list than Oregon. So we can get to that specific matchup later, but we think Colorado is a real team, right?
Yeah, they're a real team. There are, I think, very serious flaws with them that, yes, maybe we can talk about it. We can talk about it more when we talk about the Oregon matchup. They've not really come to bear just yet. I'm sort of waiting for it to happen. But I also there's a resiliency there with them too. Deion's got them believing in something. I don't know that they win that game against Colorado State without it. Jay Norvell, by the way, to talk all that smack and then coach like a coward at the end of that game, very disappointing. Very disappointing.
Why are coaches so afraid? Why are so many coaches? Because there are fewer. I think obviously we see it with our eyes. Back to the day where it's like, well, it's 4th down, get a punt. And that's not how everybody plays now. No. But it is how some people still play. And I don't know why the remaining afraid coaches are still afraid. But you've talked about Matt Campbell at Iowa State. You've talked about Tom Allen at Indiana, Jay Norvell at Colorado State. What? You're losing by being afraid. At least go down swinging, man.
That's what I love the most about the Western Kentucky game with Ohio State. Western Kentucky didn't punt basically until it was 42-7 or whatever it was, which I respected. More teams need to do that. But anyway, back to Colorado. Yeah, I love what's happening there. I don't know if people have Deion fatigue or what, and I don't. I think it's really cool. I think it's something different. I like when new programs get energized like this, especially when they're on in our general part of the country. It can make the teams we're talking about all the more interesting. I'm waiting. It almost feels like it's going to turn into a pumpkin at some point, but maybe it won't. I don't know. Maybe they'll beat Oregon this week and I'll eat those words. But for the time being, I'm enjoying watching them.
You'll eat that pumpkin. You like pumpkin? You're a pumpkin eater?
Season. Yeah, I'll eat a pumpkin pie. Yeah.
You wouldn't eat a big slice of pumpkin though, right? People don't
do people do that?
Do they? Halloween's over, let's eat the pumpkin?
I can't imagine.
No, that's a rock.
I mean, it's a squash, right? People eat squash. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, I love squash. All right, maybe we'll eat some pumpkin on the show. That would be a northern thing to do. I'm sure in the South they're not sitting around eating pumpkin during football season.
No,
No.
They're not.
We need a hook. We'll eat whatever it takes. When we come back, we're going to rank the quarterbacks. But for now, our team rankings: Washington 1, Michigan 2, Penn State 3, Notre Dame 4, Ohio State 5, Colorado 6, Utah 7, Oregon State 8, and Oregon 9. 9 legit teams in the North that deserve to be ranked. Quarterbacks next on Kings of the North. All right, Landis, I thought it was a good time to do quarterbacks. We had done all the best players, Knights of the North. We're going to hand out an award at the end of the year. Maybe have a ceremony. Then we did coaches. But I think this to me is no shock because the Kyle McCord, Sam Hartman, Ohio State-Notre Dame matchup. We're trying to say, like, okay, well, this is a big game. Usually when Ohio State plays a big game, they have the better quarterback. Now, that especially in the regular season, especially in the Big Ten. And of course, it's not a Big Ten game. It is a Northern game. But it's like, okay, you're playing Trevor Lawrence or you're playing Mac Jones or you're playing Deshaun Watson, right? Then when you get into playoff and situations like that, okay, maybe it's not so true. But that's sort of a defining characteristic of big Ohio State games during the regular season is they have the guy who slings it better.
Yeah, that is true. The Big Ten especially just doesn't typically have guys like we're talking about. They have a few of them this year, which is exciting, which I think makes these rankings more interesting. But yeah, it is very rare for Ohio State to get on the field against a quarterback that you think has like real NFL upside potential in the regular season. They probably did it last week against Austin Reed for being fair. But obviously you're going to do it again this week against Sam Hartman.
So I think it's interesting to see where Kyle McCord checks in here. Michael Penix is checking in at the top, and that is not a shock. We already ran down his stats. You and I both had him number 1. Where are you on the idea that this is the Indiana quarterback who in the COVID years stretched for the touchdown? Wasn't actually a touchdown. He actually was a little bit short against Penn State, but it launched Indiana into that 8-2 record. They finished in the top 10. Michael Penix made Tom Allen like $30 million, right? 50, I don't know, whatever it is. If Tom Allen has a nice car, if he gets extra toppings on his pizza, if he decides to get, not shop on the clearance rack at Kohl's, if he goes straight for like, I don't even need 30% off. Michael Penix pulled Tom Allen out of the 30% off bin. But then after he did that, I think people were like, well, he's good, but I don't know. How good is he? And it's like, oh, he's the best quarterback in the North, which is what he's done at Washington with great receivers, with a great play caller, but also by being an unbelievable quarterback. And again, we're united here, but it's a little shocking to sort of come to grips with the fact that, Indiana Michael Penix is Washington Michael Penix.
It is odd. I think my holdup with Michael Penix and some of the attention he was getting toward the end of his Indiana stint was I thought he turned the ball over too much and like made too many risky throws. And now I think he's still making the same throws. It's just that his receivers are awesome now and they help him out sometimes. Like even in the Michigan State game, he had a 1 touchdown pass to Jalen Polk that like should have been intercepted. It hit off the defender's hands and fell into Jalen's hands, and then he just ran into the end zone with it. So I do think there's a little bit of gunslinger there with Michael Penix that if he was playing with different receivers, it might look a little different. But that doesn't mean he's a bad quarterback. His willingness to make those throws, I think, is what makes him great. So I'm not criticizing him for it. It's just like funny when you change the people around him, how something can look different. But I think that he is the best quarterback in the country right now, right? I don't. That's not just
Caleb Williams.
Well, I mean, like pure passer, like I would take Michael Penix. I think like Caleb is electric and does a lot of stuff and turns his back to the play and runs around like a crazy person. Dropping back and ripping it, I think I might take Michael Penix.
I do think the NFL is going to be interested, right? Because he's got size. He can rip it down the field, and I've thought too that he can get a little loose with the ball sometimes. But I'll tell you, PFF has a stat: turnover worthy plays, right? And which is like, hey, like could it have been a turnover? And there are quarterbacks in major college football through 3 or 4 weeks with 11, with 8, with 7. He has 2. So I think because I thought that all last year. I thought it both with Bo Nix and Michael Penix. Like they're really good, but man, they make me nervous. And it does help when you have guys like that. But I do think it's a familiar conversation, I think, like to people who follow Ohio State football. Do the quarterbacks make the receivers or the receivers make the quarterback? And I think there's some of that going on at Washington, but I actually don't think it's either. I think they're all complementing each other in the best possible way, which is, I think, towards the end of CJ Stroud's career at Ohio State, there maybe were some frustrated people who were like, oh man, it's just the receivers. It's like, I don't know. CJ Stroud threw for 350 in week 2 in the NFL as a rookie on Sunday. So, the receivers were great, but I think they were all complementing each other. So I just want to make sure that I think as good as he's been and as ridiculous as his stats are, I still think he's better than you think. And I don't mean you, I mean everybody. Yeah. As good as he is, he's still better than you think.
Well, people don't get to watch him. I think it's part of the problem. They just see the stats and probably assume that it's just a byproduct of like an air raid offense, which maybe is not the wrong inclination, but you got to watch him. Like if you have not watched Michael Penix play, it's a sight to behold, man, with these receivers. His average depth of target against Michigan State was 14 yards. Every play was a bomb.
Yeah. He just steps back and rips it and puts it right where it needs to be. So we were united. Michael Penix is number 1. We were also united. Shadur Sanders at Colorado is number 2. And you watch the end of that Colorado State game. They're down 11 in the fourth quarter. They come back and tie it. They have to, after they score the touchdown at the end, they have to get the 2-point conversion to stay alive. They get both 2-point conversions in overtime. And he slows the game down.
Yep.
He's one of those guys, that last 2-point conversion, right? 2 blitzers in his face. He sees them. He doesn't panic. He waits and lets his guy come wide open in the back of the end zone. And I think in an individual play, he slows the game down, but also like the game itself. It's like, hey, you're down 11. And I think like Shadur Sanders is like, it's okay. Oh, can we call him the Matrix? I'm going to call him the Matrix. As I've never seen the Matrix. Do things slow down in the Matrix, or do they just do karate in a video game?
No, they slow down. It's the whole thing. Like the guys like bending backwards and the bullets fly past them.
Yeah. Shadur Sanders, the Matrix. He slows things down, and then he's just in such control. Doesn't mean he's perfect, but he did that as his best weapon. Travis Hunter was knocked out of the game on a dirty hit, right? Nobody liked the hit, did they?
I thought that play was gross. Like, for all the guys that get ejected for targeting when they're just trying to make a play and accidentally hit a guy's helmet, like that was intentional. That dude was trying to hurt Travis Hunter. And the fact that he was not kicked out of that game, I thought was an atrocity.
Which is a little bit of like Jay Norvell, like you're going to bring it. You're going to be like, hey, I'm going to show Deion Sanders. And it's like, and then like your guys play like that. And then you blow it as you chicken out down the stretch. It's like multiple ways not cool. So, and Shadur Sanders is who pulls him out of the fire. So that dude, like all the mechanics, the specifics of playing quarterback at a high level are present. Poise, pocket, arm, brain, processing, but then also just the everything's going to be okay part of it is kind of next level.
He is, I think, unflappable. He is among the most sacked quarterbacks in the country, and it doesn't seem to bother him at all. I think he's got a little bit of magic dust on him. He is, and like physically, maybe there are probably guys on this list who are like physically are more impressive than Shadur Sanders. If I got to win a game, I think I'm taking him right now. Maybe out of anybody else on this list. The fourth quarter was impressive. I wanted to look this up because Colorado has played, like the TCU game was a shootout. Even the Nebraska game was a little wonky early and they had to like pull away in the second half. And then obviously this game was tight. So he's played in 3 fairly competitive games, or 2 very competitive games, and one that was still fairly competitive. In the second half and overtime this year, he's 58 of 71 for 871 yards, 7 touchdowns, and no interceptions.
In the second half.
Yeah.
He averages 300 yards in the second half and overtime. Who's a quarterback that you and I have both watched a lot of, who took a lot of sacks, held the ball in the name of making plays, but also kind of spread the idea of it's okay, I've got this?
Oh, I don't know.
Justin Fields? Little Justin Fields?
Yeah, but Justin Fields took sacks because like he was trying to make plays. He didn't take sacks because his offensive line stunk.
Oh, that's true. I like taking sacks. People are like, that guy's been sacked 9 times a game. I love it. I love it. Means you're not afraid. Means you're not just like, oh, here comes a guy, I'm going to get rid of the ball. You believe in yourself. You believe in your receivers.
Yeah.
I love sacks. If I was a coach, I'd be like, how well can you get sacked? All right,
it's a fearlessness thing, right? It's like that is an underrated quarterback trait, I think.
Yeah. Tied for third, JJ McCarthy and Sam Hartman. It's kind of a weird tie, sort of like opposite ends of the spectrum tie. Super old, like has seen it all versus like young buck who's kind of growing into it and ripping it. But I think both are exactly what their teams need. And I think if they play at their maximum, both of them can lead their teams to the playoff. But I also think they're not the top two. Was McCarthy and Hartman, are they in the right spot?
Yeah, I think they're in the right spot. I think JJ probably has a higher ceiling than JJ's ceiling. I think is, if he hits, is higher than what Sam Hartman is right now. Both of them kind of terrify me with their willingness for JJ to run around and make some wild throws, and for Sam Hartman to think he can literally make any throw on the planet. And I like that. I think I'd rather have that than not, but it's not always the most reassuring trait, I think, for a quarterback to have. But Sam Hartman's been incredibly efficient this year. He might be the most efficient passer in the country. So he's not really done much of that yet. He has made Notre Dame's offense far more explosive, I think, than it's been in recent seasons. And I can't remember that I had JJ ahead of Sam Hartman, I think, because of the ceiling thing. I think they're in the right spot. I think there's a clear separation between Michael Penix and like the magic that we're seeing with Shedeur Sanders. But both these guys are very good. And part of that is, and I know it's weird to rank JJ here, I guess, like after how he looked against Bowling Green. He looked like a dude in the first 2 games of the season. So I'm banking on that being more of the reality than what we just saw.
You had McCarthy 3, Hartman 4. I had Hartman 3, McCarthy 4. If JJ played better in week 3, I probably would have had JJ ahead of Hartman. 5 is Bo Nix. Again, I still think it's hard to get a read on Oregon a little bit. Weird shootout at Texas Tech. Drop 80 on just a ridiculously overmatched Portland State team, which is why I do think this Colorado game is going to tell us something. Mm-hmm. But again, Bo Nix is a guy who in my head is looser as a quarterback than the stats say that he is. And NFL people love this guy. He's really high on a lot of draft lists. He's been around forever. When he went from Auburn to Oregon, I thought it was sort of like, okay, well, like he was okay at Auburn. I don't know, Dan Lanning, you're the new coach at Oregon. You're bringing in the Auburn quarterback. And it's been remarkable. I mean, it's basically the same story as Michael Penix in Indiana. It's like, okay, yeah, no, this guy's great. So I do think he's in the right spot, but like I don't feel very strongly about it.
Yeah, it is odd. Like you're almost like waiting for him to revert back, right, to what he was at Auburn. He had 16 interceptions in 3 years at Auburn. He had 7 last year. He doesn't have any yet this year. He's at 8 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. So I don't know really what to make of him yet either. And honestly, I don't know how much of a test Colorado will be for him. People like him, like they're trying to do the Heisman campaign with him. Like I don't think he's been nearly that impressive yet. And those games I think will come. That this will be a game for him, I think, to elevate himself in that way. Even if Colorado's defense is not actually presenting him the stiffest challenge, it's like what do you do in big games? And this is a big game. So I think he's improved like pretty drastically from when he was at Auburn. And I don't know if there's a myriad reasons why that could be the case. Part of it maybe being that he's got better skill talent around him at Oregon than he had at Auburn, and maybe doesn't feel like he has the weight of the world on his shoulders playing at Oregon like he did at Auburn when he's supposed to be like a savior of the program. So he's good. I had him behind Kyle McCord because I think like the best version of Kyle, and granted that's a projection, but I think the best version of Kyle in Ohio State's offense I think is still something I'd rather have over Bo Nix.
I think it's not worth over defining a ranking like this. The one thing I was going to say is for this week, let's just say if you're Ohio State, just for this week, if you could trade Kyle McCord for Bo Nix, would you do it?
Yeah, probably. You'd probably want that experience, right? If like more than anything else, like there's a chance that Kyle McCord gets out in the field in South Bend and is like, whoa, what is this? And like I don't think Bo Nix would do that.
That's why I had Nix ahead of McCord. And I'm not saying that's what this ranking is. Who would you want to play on Saturday? Who would you want your guy to be? But, that was maybe the tiebreaker for me.
Mm-hmm.
Bo Nix, by the way, talking about turnover-worthy plays, 109 dropbacks for him this year, 105 dropbacks. According to PFF, turnover-worthy plays so far, none. 0.
Yeah.
Kyle McCord, 6th. 1 point ahead of Drew Allar, who was 7th. I think that's the right order. Kyle McCord is a year ahead. It's like really Kyle McCord and J.J. McCarthy are the comparison. They're in the same recruiting class. Ohio State was interested in both of them. Drew Allar and Devin Brown are the comparison. But as it stands now, it's third-year Kyle McCord's playing for Ohio State. Second-year Drew Allar's playing for Penn State. We do have more of a sample size of Allar a little bit because he played last year some behind Sean Clifford, and he's been the starter. Everybody knew it. And Kyle McCord just won this job. But why is McCord ahead of Allar? And is part of it the system that he's in maybe just has, with what Ohio State's done with quarterbacks, has a better chance of bringing out the best in him?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think that Drew Allar didn't impress me a whole lot against Illinois, which is I think is fine. Like he's making his third career start against the fairly salty defense, a good defensive line. I think if Drew Allar were in Ohio State's offense with what weapons Kyle McCord has to throw to, then I would think of him differently. And that's not a knock on Kyle. I just think like he's young, right? That is an instance, excuse me, of the offense and the players bringing a quarterback forward. And maybe by the middle of the year, we'll think that less, but Kyle's still figuring some stuff out. He's been more efficient than I think that Drew Allar has. And I think like if you watch Drew Allar, like some of the quote unquote explosive plays that have happened do feel like he's been bailed out a couple of times by his receivers on maybe inaccurate balls. He's got 4 touchdowns in 3 games and no interceptions. So, and his depth is average yards per throw is not overly impressive either. So I think maybe there's a part of that like there's still some training wheels there with the offense, and maybe if Penn State were to let him loose a little more, he'd be more impressive. But they are, I think, trying to slow play it with him. So, and the same is true for Kyle McCord. I think you're going to see both these guys get more and more. But I would rather have Kyle in Ohio State's offense right now than Drew in Penn State's offense.
Yeah, and it's hard. You can't totally separate the player and the offense, right? So then it factors into the evaluation. And so I do think it's kind of a toss-up. They're both very early in their careers, and we'll get a great look at this in October when Ohio State and Penn State play each other. And as explosive as the Ohio State skill guys are, and as good as this Penn State defense looks, that game might come down to which quarterback plays better. And then we'll have the answer to this question. But I think for them to be, I did think Nix with the resume deserved to be ahead of both those guys. So Michael Penix 1, Shadur Sanders 2, J.J. McCarthy and Sam Hartman tied for 3rd, Bo Nix 5. That felt right to me. Kyle McCord 6, Drew Allar 7. In some order, feels right to me. If they were tied, I think I'd be fine with that. But I do think coin flip McCord wins it. And then we have a drop. So then after that top 7, DJ Uyunglele at Oregon State and Garrett Schrader, who we just talked about at Syracuse, are tied for 8th. DJ, I feel like we know who he is, but also there's been a lot of like he wasn't the problem at Clemson. He's been very solid at Oregon State. They have not asked him to do too much. They have a good offensive line. They have a good coach. They have a dynamic running back, but also he's played very well. He's been exactly, and being who your team needs you to be is a fantastic trait. His PFF grade is good. He has 6 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, 61% completion percentage. Like he's playing very good football. And then Garrett Schrader's like a one-man offense. Again, it's sort of like opposite sides here. So I don't want to put DJ in the top 10 and be like, everything I say or we say sort of sounds like a criticism, because he's being exactly what his team needs him to be. But I just think maybe Oregon State's being smarter, calling better plays, putting him in better situations, and now he looks like a better quarterback. And so when it's like, he wasn't the problem at Clemson, probably like agreed, but also he's not Michael Penix, right? So I think he's in the right spot.
Yeah, I think they're probably accentuating his strengths more at Oregon State than Clemson did. Clemson just like takes a quarterback, puts them all in the same offense, and sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. It did not work for DJ, and I think I figured when DJ left to go to Oregon State, his play would improve, if only because like it just didn't feel like the right environment for him in terms of what they were trying to do on offense at Clemson. And it does seem like Oregon State is more kind of his speed. He's also, they've not really been tested yet. We'll see what happens when they get into a game when they're playing some better competition. That'll happen this week. So I think the thing with DJ at Clemson was like he's fine, but we got to go win a big game. Can he win you a big game? And I think that question is still left unanswered. So we'll see where that goes. Garrett Schrader, I probably had a little lower than you had him because I think he does leave a little something to be desired as a passer. He's a good athlete and a gamer, and like what he did against Purdue was impressive. But if you look at some of the passing numbers, they just don't stack up.
Yeah, and you're playing the position and all the things that come into it. So as a dual threat, I mean, like he's like his what he's done historically at Syracuse as a running quarterback and like an all-purpose quarterback is pretty amazing. So he continues to move up those lists, and then. Our final spot, tied for 10th. I like it because it's guys who have the same last name except for one letter, but you pronounce them differently. English language, man. Cam Ward at Washington State and Hudson Card at Purdue. Cam Ward might be underrated here. He hasn't thrown a pick this season, and if a Washington State fan is listening to this and saying like, "Hey, he should be like in the top 6." I don't know that I would have a great argument against it, Landis, because this is a guy, he's not a one-hit wonder. He did it at a lower level before, did it at Washington State last year. He's thrown for 990 yards in 3 games, 72% completions, 9 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Why is he tied for 10th?
I don't know. I had him 7th. So.
All right. So it's me.
Yeah, it's you.
So it's me. Okay. That's fair. I mean, that's fair. You had him 7th? Now I feel bad. Okay. It's me.
I think I did. We double check that, but I'm pretty sure I did.
And I just like Hudson Card. I probably am overrating Hudson Card, but I think like there's still some pedigree in there from his recruiting days, and I think he can elevate Purdue a little bit, but they lost at Syracuse. So like how much are they really being elevated? He threw for 3 bills in that Syracuse loss. I still think like Hudson Card's going to get somebody, just like some of these individual players, you can win your team a game that's going to upset the apple cart a little bit. But Cam Ward, we're going to see it, and we'll get to it in our look ahead. Oregon State, Washington State this week is a heck of a game, and Cam Ward might come out and throw for 425 and 5 touchdowns, and we'll be like, why wasn't he 4th?
I did change my rankings to I don't want to hang out to dry. I originally had him 7th, and then I was moving some guys around, and he did end up 10th for me as well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think I had him like 11th.
I had Hudson Card 14th though, so him being in the top 10 is all you.
Is all me. All right, so those are our top 10. Pretty I like that collection of quarterbacks. Now, you and I have spent a long time covering the Big Ten. This is like Northern quarterbacks. There's actually like not a ton of Big Ten quarterbacks in it. There's some Pac-12 quarterbacks, and again, that league was just getting really fun when it exploded. The idea of Notre Dame having a quarterback like this. Listen, Ian Book was a playoff quarterback. He was a good quarterback, but I think Sam Hartman is elevating this. He's coming from a Southern ACC team to do it. But by the way, we also have to note that the South keeps grabbing mediocre Northern quarterbacks. And it's like, if the South is like, ooh, we're the South, it's like, I don't know what to tell you, man. Auburn's quarterback is the old Michigan State guy. And Florida's quarterback is the old Wisconsin guy. And Texas's quarterback came to high school in Columbus for a year. So, you can think you're cool, but the Tennessee quarterback started off at Michigan and couldn't play at Michigan and went to Tennessee. So we should do that ranking. The best Northern rejects now playing starting quarterback in the South. That'd be a great, that list might go to 20.
Yeah, it is funny how they've sort of swapped. Like Luke Altmaier went to Illinois from Ole Miss. Tanner Mordecai is from SMU, right, to Wisconsin. So they're the South is returning the favor by sending some mediocre quarterbacks back up here. But I think the South is doing a far worse job of evaluation by taking, cast-offs from Northern quarterback rooms.
Yeah. Okay. Pretty good quarterback group. I think we'll continue to see this. And this is one of these things where the North has to be good at this, right? Because there's no reason if you want to be a great quarterback, it's like you have to learn to play in weather sometimes. And, you want to play maybe some pro style offenses. And like the North should have great quarterbacks. Sometimes if there's areas where it's like, well, I don't know. It's like, okay, well, we understand maybe why the North doesn't have as many great players at a certain position. The South has been putting out athletic defensive tackles for 20 years. And it's like in the North, it's like if you can get one guy like Newton, it's like one guy like that a year. And it's like, okay. But quarterbacks, this is what Ryan Day and Jim Harbaugh and Kalen DeBoer, this is what they have to do. And I think they should be able to continue to do this. So we want to do our quarterback rankings now when we come back. What you're all really here for. It's the Brian Ferentz Survivor Show next on Kings of the North. Doug Lesmerises, I'm outraged again on the Brian Ferentz Survivor Show. I don't always want to be angry. But with the Ferentzes, I can't help it. They scored with 33 seconds left against the 111th best defense in the country. So Iowa got to 41 against Western Michigan, 24 in game 1, 20 in game 2, 41 in game 3. He has to average 25 points a game to keep his job. So I just want people to understand this, okay? Because how you get there matters, which is why just setting a number is ridiculous. Syracuse played Western Michigan the week before. Syracuse beat Western Michigan 48-7. Okay? Iowa beat Western Michigan 41-10. Pretty similar, right? Oh, they both handled Western Michigan and ran up big scores. Hey, what are you going to do? When Syracuse beat Western Michigan, they won 48-7. The score at the half was 45-7. And then Syracuse was like, we will give you a break. When Iowa beat Western Michigan, the score at the half was 14-10. And then Iowa said, we're going to try to score 27 in the second half to save our coordinator's job. They blocked a punt that turned into a safety for 2 points that set up a short field for a touchdown. They got a turnover where they started at the 18-yard line and set up a touchdown. And it is just a fraudulent exercise from top to bottom. But congrats on the 41, Bri.
Touchdown drives is 66 yards, 25 yards, 53 yards, 17 yards, and 33 yards. It's fake. It's all fake.
It makes me so mad. But they are ahead of schedule. Last year at this time, after 3 games, Iowa had 3 touchdowns. This is why we are where we are. They had 4 touchdowns in 3 games last year. They scored 4 touchdowns in the first 3 games. I think one of them was on defense. So this year they have 10. So they're much better. They're way ahead. 5 running, 4 passing, and 1 on defense. They are tied for 82nd in the country in number of overall touchdowns. They are 52nd of the 69 Power 5 teams. And the number of overall touchdowns, Luke Lachey, their really good tight end, son of Ohio State legend and broadcaster Jim Lachey, got hurt in that game. That obviously will hurt Brian Ferentz, but like we're not joking about that because that guy's a pro, as most Iowa tight ends are. I don't know, he might arguably be like the most important person on the offense, and he was on crutches, I guess, during that game. I actually didn't have a chance to check what the prognosis is there, but best wishes to Luke Lachey. We hope he gets back on the field.
Yeah, I was sad to hear that too. I want to see what exactly was said. Fairly significant injury.
That's too bad.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be long term. Yeah.
So, the whole thing is a joke. I was fast forward. I didn't watch the game live this time, so I was fast forwarding through it, so I didn't hear if there were outrageous, silly things said by the announcers. I do know that the analyst on the Big Ten Network broadcast was a former Iowa player, but, they have former Ohio State players do Ohio State games all the time, so you can't get hung up on that. But I doubt that he came out and was like, taking shots at Bri. So 41, and we're going to talk about the Iowa-Penn State game in a moment, but I'm just going to say now that Iowa will be shut out by Penn State.
It's not a bad pick. Cade McNamara was 9 of 19 in this game, and they were 4 of 12 on third down. So don't let them fool you. Don't let them fool you with the 41.
I'm not. No, people. That is the most fraudulent 41 that you will ever see in your life. But congratulations to the backup quarterback. Western Michigan went for it on 4th and 2 at like their own 33. with like a minute and a half left. 4th and 2 on their own 33, which is then how Iowa took over and went on that final touchdown drive led by the backup quarterback who was
threw the ball twice. They threw the ball twice.
The backup quarterback came out and like ripped the throw down the middle of the field for 20 yards. It's like, oh, this is gold. It's like, did the Western Michigan coach not get the message? Again, the conflicting part is we don't know if people want Brian Ferentz to keep his job or not. So we will continue to monitor it, but he's now ahead of schedule. So we'll see what Manny Diaz and the Nittany Lions have to say about that. It's all in your hands. Do you know Manny Diaz? Could we get him a message on behalf of the college football universe? And let's just tell Mike Yursich and James Franklin too, like, don't be messing around in the fourth quarter. Like, we got to get that. Keep your first team defense in, because they're trying to backdoor a last 30 seconds touchdown in a 30-point game. All right.
Yeah, they will.
Go, Manny. I'm not rooting. Just observing. We're just observing and sharing it with the good people. When we come back, we went faster through the other stuff so we could get to the look ahead, because guess what? It's awesome. We'll look at the games that matter in the North next on Kings of the North. All right, Bill Landis, we have 11 Northern teams in the top 25 of the AP poll, which is kind of meaningless because the AP poll should exist. I always want to make sure when I complain about polls, I'm not saying that they shouldn't exist, because if polls didn't exist and there weren't rankings, then we couldn't say things like, hey, this is a top 10 matchup, or we couldn't say things like, hey, a team's all-time record against teams in the top 5. So I don't know why teams are like, people are like, there shouldn't be polls. And it's like, we need to mark the progress of teams and the progress of the season. I just wish we did it more intelligently. Yeah. But like many things in life, the answer to something, if you don't like it, is not to get rid of it. It's to make it better. So just vote smarter, you stupid voters. That's all. 11, right? Did you ever vote? Did you ever vote?
I voted. Yeah, I voted for 2 years, I think. Yeah.
You were smart, right? When you voted, you were smart.
I tried to be. 1 week, I did forget to rank UCF, and boy, did I hear about it from UCF fans.
I can remember when I was a kid, my local writer, the local paper that I read, was an AP voter. And it made me feel famous that the guy that I read was an AP voter. And one time he forgot to rank a team, and I like wanted to go to his house and bring him cookies, because I was like, I'm so sorry this happened to you, because it felt to me like the worst thing that could ever happen to a person.
Yeah, I got it pretty good from UCF fans, but I was just like, I'm sorry, I forgot. And like, oh, okay. It's not like, I don't think your team's bad. I literally just forgot. And like,
yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay. So there are 11 ranked teams. 9 of those 11 ranked teams are playing a ranked team this week. The only 2 that are not are our 2 best teams, Washington and Michigan. Everybody else, Northern teams in the top 25, playing a ranked opponent. We have 6 games we want to talk about, starting with number 1, the best game of the week. Number 6, Ohio State at number 9, Notre Dame, 7:30 NBC, Noah Eagle and Todd Blackledge. Ohio State is favored by 3. I checked this Saturday morning before the games, and I think it was 1.5. I said going into this weekend that I thought the game should be a pick'em. Mm-hmm. Coming out of the weekend, I would say I don't think that anymore. This line actually seems right to me. And as we discussed earlier, Bill, I am super curious to find out if an offensive line can win you a game. With a quarterback who knows what to do with the time he is given. But like, that's how good I think this Notre Dame offensive line is. It feels like maybe right guard is a weak spot a little bit at times, but for the most part, they block it up in the pass game, and they get out and they pull like crazy, and they run counters, and they get to the second level. And the thing that from an Ohio State standpoint, I think the things you have to be worried about are, I thought watching Notre Dame this week, it reminded me a little bit of 2021 Michigan. And there's that Blake Corum run early in the second half of the Ohio State-Michigan game that's sort of like seared into my mind. It's like a 52-yard run that felt like Michigan made 8 perfect blocks on that play. And I think there might be moments in this game where it feels like, oh, what happened on that play? And it's like, I don't know, 6 Notre Dame guys did their jobs perfectly, and there was anything Ohio State could do defensively. And then the other thing that would worry me from an Ohio State's defensive standpoint is if while Sam Hartman is getting time, they get mismatches and they get receivers on safeties, which is what's been a bugaboo for Ohio State last year. I think there should be great confidence in Denzel Burke and Davis Igminosin and Jordan Hancock, the Ohio State corners. But if they get mismatches and all of a sudden guys who are not cover first guys wind up having to defend way down the field on a play action shot, that would be a concern for me. So,
yeah.
But the rest of it, not super explosive receivers for Notre Dame. I don't know that there's a defensive guy that really, really, really jumps out. I don't know. So it's they're so good at one thing. How concerned do you think Ohio State should be with what Notre Dame does?
Yep, pretty concerned. I think. I think it's possible that Ohio State's defense is excellent and perhaps elite. We can't anoint them that just yet. And honestly, I don't know if you can do that coming out of this Notre Dame game. Maybe depending on what it looks like. But like Notre Dame is like quarterback, offensive line, and then as you said, that's kind of like the receivers don't do much for me. I think the Aldrich Estime is a good running back, but I don't think he's like a top 10 running back in the country. The tight ends, I think, are a notch below what they have been at Notre Dame in the past. Like they can get in space and get you if you're over aggressive on things. But I really think it's a game where like Ohio State just, if it doesn't screw up and get in its own way, I think they win. If it doesn't have mistakes that it ends up compounding on both sides of the ball, then I think Ohio State does win because it just has more manpower. And it's not, if Notre Dame's defensive line was a bunch of dudes going against Ohio State's offensive line on the road in a raucous environment, I would feel differently about this game, but I do not view Notre Dame's defensive line that way, and I don't think you should. So otherwise, I think Ohio State has the advantage just about everywhere. And I don't know, like for as good as Notre Dame's offensive line is, and they're excellent, especially at tackle, I don't know. I could, if we get to the end of that game and it's like, oh, Ohio State's defensive line won that battle. Like, I don't think that's a shock, right? I think Ohio State's up to that challenge. Do you think that's a shock?
I would maybe be shocked. I know the defensive.
If Ohio State's like defensive tackles just like kind of own the middle of the line of scrimmage, and like maybe JT, Joey Mullow, and Jack Sawyer don't have 3 sacks apiece, but I think the middle of that offensive line could be vulnerable.
Yeah, I think that's possible. I think my call of defensive tackle for Ohio State lined up over the Notre Dame right guard could be a thing where you see leakage there. I definitely think that's possible. One of the other things, and you just have to, it's not a criticism of Kyle McCord. It's just young quarterback situation. Young quarterback against Sam Hartman, who's made 55 starts in his life or whatever it is. But one thing I like, and yes, they were explosive, and there was some blown cover. Again, Western Kentucky's defense is almost like incompetent. Like, no offense. But there's no resistance there.
Yep.
But, and I know you like this kind of stuff. They ran a little play with the Emeka Egbuka this week that they had run with Marvin Harrison Jr. the week before, where they, after the snap, they run him behind the line of scrimmage and then flip him a ball. They flip the ball to Travion Henderson. That's a play you broke down, right? I like that they're getting easy throws for Kyle McCord. They had a couple easy throws to Cade Stover that they popped. Easy throws that are explosive. It's not just have Kyle McCord stand back there and make 3 reads and survey the field and rip a throw 25 yards. I don't know that they even have to do that. I think they might be able to do a bunch of little stuff, get the ball in the hands of future NFL guys and move the ball that way.
Yeah, I think they could too. The one thing I am interested in this game, and I'm sure it'll come up with Ryan Day. I think it has to. And he's not going to give away the game plan, right? But he's talked a lot about putting too much on CJ Stroud's shoulders in 2021 when they played Oregon. And I think you would want to avoid doing that with Kyle McCord in this game. Similar matchup. This one's on the road. This Notre Dame team is probably better than that Oregon team was. But I think that's a fine line too. Like you don't want to be so aware of it and nervous about it that you almost turtle up and just like try to play possession and run the ball. Like I thought they did that a little bit last year against Notre Dame, and it ended up with them scoring 21 points. I think you do have to find the balance between not making it all about Kyle and putting the game on his shoulders, but also trusting his ability to make some plays too and let your offense be explosive. Like it's that efficient and explosive conversation we had last week I think it was on the Wednesday Kings. I think this is a pretty big test of that for Ryan Day. What do you want to be?
So we're not going to make picks. We're not here to make picks in the look ahead. We're here to talk about the games early in the week. But I'm going to ask you this question for all 6 of the games we're looking at. Do you believe this will be a competitive, entertaining game?
Yeah.
So do I. Game number 2, number 19, Colorado at number 10, Oregon. 3:30 start. This is nearly a 3-touchdown game. And again, I was talking about this before the Colorado State game when people are all super jacked up about Colorado. They had early lines on both Oregon and USC that were at 14.5. And I thought that this is people being too excited about Colorado. But now that, it's moved to touchdown, right? I think based off they're not infallible. Like had to go to double overtime to beat Colorado State. So 20.5, 3:30 start on ABC. I, however, am not viewing this game for Colorado like I am the USC game, because there are going to be some guys on the field for USC, and USC does not have a complete depth of talent yet either. But Caleb Williams and some of their receivers and a couple of the standout guys, Zachariah Branch, right, with the ball in his hands as a return man or a receiver, they have their own Travis Hunter. They have their own Shadur Sanders at USC. I don't know that I think Oregon has a greater depth of talent than Colorado, but I don't know that they have it the way USC does. Travis Hunter, I guess, is not going to play. Is that what we understand from the hit he took in that Colorado State game?
Yeah, he's out for a few weeks.
That stinks.
Yep.
Thanks, Jay Norvell. Man, that stinks. I think Colorado can hang, though. Like, is there a formula for that, you think?
Yeah, if the game's a shootout, I think I will. This is not the betting show. I hit it at 19.5 because I thought that was too big. I don't think Colorado's going to get blown off the field in this game.
You took Colorado plus 19.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think they're going to get blown off the field either. USC might be another story. I think Caleb Williams might just be waiting to be like, okay, this Colorado defense is not actually really that good. And here's Zachariah Branch and Dorian Singer and everybody else. So I just don't know if Oregon can do that the same way. Because Oregon kind of had trouble with Texas Tech. And I know that was at Texas Tech and there was a little bit of revenge stuff there. And Texas Tech was mad because they had lost the week before. But Colorado's always mad, right? Deion Sanders has this team in the perfect position, which is he has them motivated and they're overachieving and everybody wants a piece of them, but also there's a lot of doubters. He doesn't have to make up doubters and haters. Jay Norvell was like, hey, everybody line up behind me. And now I think Jay Norvell's standing there by himself. But this is a motivated team that they're a 21-point under. They're 3-0. They're in the top 20 and they're a 21-point underdog. And Deion is going to use it all week, but I don't think they get blown out.
Yeah, he's also got too, when Colorado left the Pac-12 to go to the Big 12, they asked Dan Lanning, the Oregon coach, about it, and Dan Lanning was like, well, who cares? What's Colorado ever done? And then Oregon left a week later. But that's out there. You can use that too if you're Deion if you want to. I just don't think Colorado cannot protect its quarterback, cannot run the ball that well, and is not a particularly good defensive team. Is actually a pretty bad defensive team. So maybe this is a squash and Oregon just comes out and reminds everybody of that and shows you what it looks like when teams can actually exploit that. I thought that's what was going to happen in the TCU game. It didn't happen. Oregon is better than TCU, I think. But I just don't see, I don't know. I'm buying into whatever's going on there. And I'm not saying Colorado's going to win the national championship. I just think they're going to be competitive more often than not. And I think they are competitive in this game. I probably would still pick Oregon to win it, especially now we know that Travis Hunter's not playing. I just don't that makes the suspects secondary all the more worse against a team that I think will throw it on them. But also if you look at what Oregon's done in these first 3 games, they've not really gotten after quarterbacks all that much. And maybe that's just the nature of who they've played and they haven't felt the need to. But maybe it's possible they don't sack Shadur Sanders 9 times in this game because that's just not what they do as a defense. And if they don't, and he can make some plays, then I think it's closer than a 3-touchdown spread.
81-7 over Portland State, 38-30 at Texas Tech. That was actually a 1-point game, and they got a defensive score in the final seconds. And 55-10 over Hawaii. I just think we have no idea how good Oregon actually is. I think it's possible that Oregon actually is fine, but not great. And I think they're being treated as great right now. I have a lot of questions about USC, but I think USC has more going for it than Oregon. So anyway, competitive, entertaining game, yes or no?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, me too. Game 3, number 24, Iowa at number 7, Penn State. This is a 7:30 kickoff on CBS, head-to-head with Ohio State and Notre Dame. 14-point favorite, Penn State. I think it could get ugly. I think this could be like Iowa's defense is always really good. I like as Cooper DeJean and like their guys up front, and they're always good. Phil Parker's great. But I think the Penn State defense actually is better than Iowa's this year, which is how good I think the Penn State defense is. And then Penn State's offense is, what's the word? Functional. So like 33-6.
Yeah, I think it's either like 40-3 or 13-3. But I don't.
But we're united in the. Three.
I don't know. There are, like I said, there are some issues with Penn State's offense. Maybe they let it rip a little more. It's the whiteout game this year. I think that might matter. Although I think Iowa beat Penn State in a whiteout game, I think when I was in school, and it was like 13-9 or something like that. I think like it was a really ugly game. I think there is ugly potential with this one. I think there is the potential for Iowa's defense to stymie Penn State and keep Penn State under, like 4 touchdowns in this game. But I agree with you on Penn State's defense. I think Penn State's defense doesn't allow Iowa to do all that much, unless like what we saw from Iowa running the football last week was actually meaningful, and they can do it a little bit against Penn State's defense. I'm skeptical of that, but it's at least something. They're certainly not going to throw the ball on Penn State's defense. I don't envision them scoring many touchdowns. Maybe their defense gets a defensive touchdown, but I don't think Iowa's doing much on offense. It's just a matter of like, how good actually is Iowa's defense? Is it as good as it's been the last few years? Is it a step below that? Is their defensive line good enough to give Ohio State or Penn State's offensive line some problems? I think the answer to that question could be yes. And if it is, then I think Drew Allar could actually be in for kind of a long day. So I'm on alert for a lower score from Penn State. I think Penn State wins and probably does end up winning by a couple scores, but I think 21 or 28-3 feels a lot worse than, 38-10 or something like that.
Iowa has not played a good team yet. So just for all the stuff we do every week with Brian Ferentz, Utah State, Iowa State, Western Michigan are not good. And Iowa has had long dry stretches in all those games. In the Utah State game, they scored on their first 2 possessions and then didn't score for 2 quarters. Against Iowa State, they got ahead and then didn't score, and Iowa State got back in the game. And as we saw, Iowa State lost to Ohio. Iowa State's not good. They scored 14 against. They scored 7 points against Western Michigan in the first 28 minutes of that game. Their second touchdown was in the final 90 seconds of the first half. They are bad at offense still. And I think Penn State is one of the 5 best defenses in the country. So I think it's going to be like a whitewashing. I think it's going to be one of these where Iowa has 111 yards of total offense. So interesting competitive game. Yes or no?
No, because even if my worst case scenario comes true for Penn State, it's still not competitive. They're still winning by 3 scores.
And I mean, it might be one of those. I mean, it could be 10-3 at the half, and then Penn State wears them down and whatever. But yeah. I think the Penn State defense is going to get after it. But it's an important game, so that we had to have it third on the list. I mean, if Penn State's going to be one of the 5 best teams in the country, you have to take care of business at home against an offense this deficient. Game 4, fascinating. Oregon State and Washington State tied at the hip, suing the world together. I feel bad for them, but also I think there's great opportunity for them, and they're both playing great. Number 14, Oregon State at number 21, Washington State. It is a 7 p.m. kick on Fox, and Oregon State on the road is a 2-point favorite. I think Cam Ward is the more dynamic quarterback, the Washington State quarterback. Mm-hmm. But Cameron Martinez. No, is it Cameron Martinez?
Damian Martinez.
Cameron Martinez is for Ohio State. Damian Martinez for Oregon State is a buzzsaw, man. That guy is going crazy this year. He's probably the most dynamic playmaker in this game. There's just so much to like about Oregon State. Oregon State has the easiest path of any Pac-12 contender. So like USC and Oregon State don't play this year. But this is the kind of game that if Oregon State is really going to do something, listen, they won 10 games last year. They were great last year. So they've already done something. But if they're going to get to the Pac-12 title game, like they have to win this game.
Yeah.
They have higher goals. Like what? The teams are in similar spots. Oregon State has higher goals. Oregon State's like a cycle ahead of Washington State, maybe. So I think Oregon State must go win this game. But tell that to Cam Ward, who's accounted for 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns, and no picks in 3 games.
I'm a little surprised this line is what it is. I don't know. I think people might be a little higher on Washington State than they should be because of Washington State's win against Wisconsin. And I think anyone who's done an honest assessment of Wisconsin would tell you that is probably like an average team more than it is above average or good. So I like Oregon State here. Like I think they dominate on both lines of scrimmage in this game. They won it last year in Corvallis. They held Washington State to 1.2 yards per carry in that game. And like Cam Ward threw for a bunch of yards, but he only threw for 1 touchdown. Oregon State's defense is very good. And maybe there's some questions about like, can you be efficient enough on offense to win games like this? I think in this game they can be, just because they have Damian Martinez. And I think they are better at quarterback. Even like if you have questions about DJ Uiagalelei, they're better at quarterback this year than they were last year when they won this game. And I don't know how much of a different of a team that Washington State is, if I'm being honest. So I actually think that line is wrong. I think the read on this game is wrong.
I think that might be right. San Jose State and San Diego State, that's 2 of the 3 wins for Oregon State this year, I think are probably actually better than people realize. That maybe people look at Oregon State and think, they haven't played anybody yet. And kind of like what you're saying, I mean, again, I don't want to overstate that, but I don't know, like, San Diego State might beat Wisconsin. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think like there's a read on that. What Washington State went over Wisconsin, and I think there's not a read on the Oregon State wins over their 2 best opponents. So I think you're right. I do think it's competitive. I think Cam Ward's a problem, but I feel like Oregon State's kind of like sit on them a little bit and just make life tough. And I don't think this is a shootout. I think maybe Washington State wants it to be, but I think it's more like 27-13 kind of stuff where Washington State never quite gets the traction and Oregon State is just kind of in control. But I would still say competitive and entertaining. Would you?
Yeah, I think it will be competitive and entertaining. I don't think, like everything I said, I don't believe that Oregon State's going to run them off the field. But I do kind of think it's going to be a slow burn, but Oregon State will, I think, feel fairly comfortable throughout the game. Yeah.
Okay, game number 5 is number 22, UCLA. And again, we have a bit of a conflicted relationship with UCLA and USC this season because Southern California, is clearly not the North, but they're joining a Northern Conference next year. So when we get to next year, we're going to have to decide what we do with USC and UCLA. But for now, the reason we're talking about them is because it's UCLA at Utah, number 22 UCLA at number 11. Utah, 3:30 on Fox. Utah is favored by 5. But one of the interesting parts of this game is Dante Moore, the freshman from Detroit, who is the quarterback at UCLA. And meanwhile, like Utah has been sort of like patching everything together, led by one of the best coaches in the country, in Kyle Whittingham.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if has Dante Moore played enough to rise to the occasion in this game, because UCLA has been doing some weird stuff with its quarterbacks to the point where last week they were comfortably ahead and Dante Moore played well early in the game and then like threw him back in the game late and everyone's like, Chip, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, well, Dante needs to play more. Like, I don't know. Like it could be possible that Dante Moore, who's been very good through 3 weeks, is not quite ready for what Utah is going to throw at him. So I'm eagerly anticipating watching that. I don't know what to make of it though, because like I don't know who's going to play for Utah. They're picking up. Kyle Whittingham said this week that there's 15 to 16 players on their sideline who aren't playing who could help them win games right now.
I don't think we can be in a world where we're like, I don't know, Kyle McCord, 3rd-year Kyle McCord at Notre Dame. Who knows? Maybe he won't be ready for it. And then be like, Dante Moore, true freshman, UCLA. He's fine. Because Kyle Whittingham's going to make his life miserable.
Yeah.
So I don't even know if it matters who the Utah players are. They're going to be in Utah uniforms, and they're going to be running Kyle Whittingham's defense. So I think this could get a little rough. I think there's something in this line that's a little like, hey, UCLA, and a little like, oh, I don't know about Utah. And it's like, have you watched Utah? Two-time defending Pac-12 champ. So I think there might be an opportunity there. I'm curious to see it. And it's one of those things like Dante Moore. He's a Northern kid. The North can't be letting him get away. He was originally committed to Oregon, flipped late, as we know, went to UCLA. At least he's going to be in the Big Ten. But competitive and interesting, yes or no?
Yeah, I think so. I want to know, like, is Cam Rising going to play? Cam Rising, who was apparently cleared to practice, the Utah quarterback, was cleared to practice last week, but that did not play against Weber State. I don't know there's a smokescreen, gamesmanship going on there. Maybe they're just outright lying about how available Cam Rising actually is. But if Cam Rising's playing in this game, I guess, he's got to knock some rust off because he has not played yet. But I think it is perhaps not all that competitive. But that question mark leads me to believe that while I think Utah will probably win, I think it will be competitive and interesting.
I put Cam Rising in my top 15 on my quarterback list, even though he hasn't played. Because I was like,
I didn't just because he hadn't played. I wrote his name down. I was like, I can't vote for him. He's not played yet.
Yeah, but he exists and he's good.
He does exist.
Last game. This is a little different. It's an unranked Northern team. It is number 16 Oklahoma at Cincinnati on Fox at noon. Oklahoma is a road favorite at 13.5, and Cincinnati just lost to Miami of Ohio, right? But this is the new world. This is the world where a team in Ohio has a big conference game with a team in Oklahoma. And this is only going to happen once because this is the only time Cincinnati and Oklahoma are going to be in the same conference. So, again, to try to explain, in 2017 when Baker Mayfield came to Ohio Stadium and planted a flag in the fake grass, or tried to, if you would have tried to explain, in 6 years, Oklahoma will be back in the state of Ohio playing a conference game, you would have been like, what? Like Oklahoma's going to be in the Big Ten? So this is nuts, but this is what Cincinnati signed up for. And this is like the best version of this because Texas and Oklahoma are leaving, but like, good for Cincinnati. If you like football and you don't want to go drive to South Bend, Indiana this week, drive to Cincinnati and watch Oklahoma because Oklahoma's putting up like 70 a game. And, it's kind of cool.
What time is this game?
Noon.
Is it big noon? Because Fox is going there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's Fox game. Fox is going. They're taking Urban. They're taking Urban to Cincinnati?
Yeah, Urban's going back home, yeah.
Oh, my gosh. They're going to walk the halls. Are they walking the halls?
They're going to show that picture of him with that mustache like 85 times.
Oh, my God. If he cared about his broadcasting career, he would wear a fake mustache.
He should, yeah.
They all should wear fake mustaches. Like
that's going to happen. Yeah, I think that's going to happen.
Should wear Matt Liner's got a little urban stash on.
Yeah.
Can Cincinnati? If Cincinnati can't beat, you saw. By the way, easiest money of last college football weekend was the Tulsa Oklahoma over. Whatever it was like you knew it was going over because Kevin Wilson, Tulsa head coach, former Ohio State offensive coordinator, was going to be like, first one to 90. I don't care. Dylan Gabriel at Oklahoma is throwing the ball all over the place. Like Oklahoma wants to get back to being Oklahoma. It's a tough spot for Cincinnati. I hope it's fun and entertaining, but there's actually a part of me that's like, why is it only 13.5? Shouldn't it be like 28?
Is that so? It's an 11 o'clock body clock start for Oklahoma, right? Does that matter? Nippert Stadium is actually, I think, can be a tough place to play. I don't know if it's a tough place to play at noon, but we've seen some night games there get a little wonky. If this was a night game, I might feel a little bit differently about it. But I do think that stadium will still be rocking, and having Fox there matters. Maybe Cincinnati can keep it closer. I hope for their sake they can make it somewhat entertaining, but I kind of think they're going to get steamrolled.
Yeah, I kind of think so too, but I hope everybody has a great time.
Yeah.
Go have fun. This is like the new kid on the block for Northern football against literally like one of the biggest blue bloods there is in college football. So for Cincinnati to be less than a 2-touchdown underdog here is a great spot for the Bearcats. So good luck to them in this game. And again, Florida State plays Clemson. I don't even know who Georgia plays. I don't know who Texas plays. I don't know who Alabama plays. You know why? Because it doesn't matter because all those teams are just trying to figure out what is wrong with them. Texas and Wyoming was tied going into the fourth quarter. Meanwhile, good Northern football all over the place. We're going to be bathing in it this weekend, Landis.
We are. I'm excited about it. I am also, and maybe this is in a pure sicko way, interested in Michigan Rutgers.
Oh. You're 2 weeks removed from picking Temple to beat Rutgers, and now you're planting the seed of like Greg Schiano might have a little something.
Michigan's not going to, although like Michigan almost lost to Rutgers a couple of years ago, right?
They did lose to Rutgers a couple of years ago.
I think Rutgers is good enough on defense to like make you pay for sleepwalking through a game. And I wonder, and Jim Harbaugh's back on the sideline, right? So that's noteworthy as well.
Yes.
It's just it's kind of an interesting spot. I'm sure Michigan will win by 1 million points, but I'm looking at it.
Not if JJ McCarthy throws 3 picks. So, right. All right, Landis is putting the Wolverines on upset alert.
Yeah, that's right.
Against the Fighting Swamp Monsters. Good luck to the Scarlet Knights. A great weekend in Northern college football. It's legit. Nothing we said here is propping up anybody that is not playing legit football that deserves to be noted. And that's why we're here. Because, there's a million people talking about how great Georgia is when actually Georgia's not that great. If Georgia played anybody, Georgia would lose this year at some point. But they don't play anybody. So we're not going to find out.
They play a nighttime banger against UAB this week.
Trent Dilfer.
That's right.
Okay. We appreciate you guys making Kings of the North part of your week. We'll get back to ranking all the best Northern players, but it's going to really shake out. So next week, our team rankings are going to be interesting because there's going to be, I think, movement because we're going to have a lot more evidence. And we'll get back next week. We'll rank all the best Northern players again, and we'll see if Joe Walt's at the top or not. But enjoy this weekend. We really hope that you guys are enjoying sort of this version of analyzing college football. It's here on the podcast feed. If you want Ohio State coverage, we got it out the wazoo. This is the place for you. But we also want to, contextualize all these other teams that matter at least once a week as well. So for now, for Bill Landis, I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was Kings of the North.